States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bow your heads. Yes, Lord, we come to you today, just asking for your guidance and protection for all those within the city. Please guide us to make the right decisions for everyone within it. In your name, amen.
Okay. First item on the agenda will be public comment. Nothing to say?
No.
Good girl, good girl. Moving along, we'll do the minutes for May 13th, 2025. I guess we should have done a roll call, but.
I've got it here.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw some of
Lost
those.
Mondays.
Motion to approve now.
Have a motion to approve the minutes, have a second.
I'll second.
Have a second by Stacy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, be claims. May 14th, 2025 through June 10th, 2025. Had time to review. Any questions, corrections?
A motion, claims.
Have a motion to accept the claims.
I'll second those.
Have a second again by Stacy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, council members, any old business?
Thanks, sir.
Hearing none, we'll move on. We'll do them. Do them before we do her.
Yeah, we can.
All right. I'll have to bear with us. In old business, then we have Brandon from McCrombs Associates here to discuss a little bit of the rate study we've been discussing about the past couple of months. He would stand up and.
Thanks, Mayor. So last time we just kind of did a bit of show language when we came down here in February this year, looked at the rate study, our first draft of it, just to try and understand the operating costs and revenues and, that lease agreement is kind of floating around, that idea. So I just want to talk about that today. We firmed up the numbers a bit. The last time we did a PowerPoint, today I just got my computer set up and we can just look at the schedules from the rate study. You guys kind of got most of that information already. I do have some hard copies if anyone needs those, just let me know. But we'll have those schedules up here on the screen. So I just want to be transparent. There was a pretty significant change from when I talked with you all last, and that was on the property tax levy in this fund. So, and that was something I was not aware of, that changed from 24 to 25. When we did our rate study, we're looking at operations through the end of September, which mostly lands at 24. So when I look at the 24 budget, the sanitation fund was projected to receive about $175,000 in property taxes. So that is what I used in my model in our first draft of the rate study. Well, I found out after the fact that the property tax levy decreased in the sanitation fund from $175,000 to, I think it's closer to $82,000. So it's about a $90,000 difference. And the reason why that's significant is if that money is not coming from the property taxes, then in order to make it up, it has to come from sanitation funds, which results in a larger increase on the sanitation funds. And I believe that was just kind of moving funds around from general fund, or from the sanitation fund over to the general fund. So, in order to make the budget work for 25, I was not involved in those conversations, but as we move forward, I just want to make sure that number was still good. I talked with Chris in there, and we sorted through that. So, again, I just wanted to make sure that was, known and aware before I get started, because these numbers it's larger increases that would be needed in order to cover operations and a lease. And the reason why is because that money is no longer coming from property taxes. It would have to be made up elsewhere, which in this case, either sanitation fees or property taxes. This is a unique fund where they get to have that option with both. Unfortunately, with sanitation fund revenues, you guys, the council here in the city, has the power and the ability to change that. Whereas with the property taxes, it's very restricted. It's typically a 4% each year increase, and based on the recent legislation, I'm not sure how much you all talked about the SB1 changes, but what we're seeing with our clients in future years, if those assessed values are going down due to different deductions and exemptions that the state is changing, if the AVs are going down, then that means the tax rates are going up, or if the tax rates stay the same, then that means the property taxes are going down. It's a three-way math equation, and for the most part, we're seeing property taxes are likely to decrease for cities and towns due to the changes with the legislation. So more information I think is helpful for you all is that when you're going through this process on the sanitation fees, this is a great opportunity to try and get ahead of that, especially because this is a fund where if you have more revenues to work with in the sanitation fund, that's going to free up funding for the general fund and some of those other city funds. So let's take a look at page 5 here from the rate study. This is the operating budget that we're working with. So nothing's changed here, but just wanted to give a refresh. We're basically taking the 2025 budget that was adopted last year, and then we're creating adjustments for 2026 and 27. I believe that if the city were to go ahead and do an increase in sanitation fees, we want to make sure that those fees can sustain operations for the next few years. That's why we're using a couple of years of inflation. Some of these other line items seemed reasonable based on what we saw in previous years, and were left those the same. Those are noted as such. We're also aware that there is likely to be employee and liability insurance increases that are above and beyond what we would expect for typical inflation. We've included that here as well. So where the budget for 2025 was $485,901, we would anticipate a budget closer to $530,000 for 2026, 2027. So we move on down here to the rate impacts. Basically, I'm showing two options here. One is the operations only option, and then the other one is the lease option. So just to try and compare those, that top line, the pro forma operating disbursements, that's from that previous page, basically the operating budget. Then the garbage truck lease, which is the main difference between the two options. If you want to do the lease or not, we've got the quotes. It's about a $400,000 lease, 5 years. That's the payment, and that's how much would be needed, in order to make those payments. And then working capital, that line item is basically for either working capital or depreciated items. Most of the cost within the sanitation utility is going to be on operations. However, we do want to anticipate, if there's any unanticipated costs, we want to make sure that that's accounted for here. The reason why those two numbers are different is one, if you've got a new leased truck in option 2, there's a preventative maintenance contract included in that. So that's $79,779. That does include preventative maintenance. Therefore, we felt that it made sense to reduce that working capital amount. You don't need as much to pay for a new truck, right? Versus, the truck that you have now. After talking with Chris, the annual cost on that is upwards of $15,000 to $20,000 a year. We felt that $25,000 a year would be safe to cover that and to provide working capital for any other unanticipated costs that we're not looking at here at this time. So the bottom, below that is pro forma revenues. These amounts here, basically the the funding you have to work with in this fund. Sanitation fees and dumpster fees, we have made an adjustment for customer growth from September to today. It's about 1,500 customers is the direction that we received, so we made an adjustment for that. And then the major line that I mentioned earlier is that property taxes. That was $175,000 in 2024. In 2025, that's $82,851. That's what was approved on the 2025 DLGF budget order. So using that amount, that makes a major difference here in the revenue shortfall. So basically, the difference between these two options is that bottom line on the change in residential bill. 2250 would be able to cover your operations and provide working capital. 2570, that's going to provide your budget, your operating budget, and then the lease payment for the next 5 years. And I believe that's a revolving lease, so gives you an option, in future years to be able to renew that. So comparing these two options, basically a $5.75 increase. That's going to give you enough for budgeting here in the next couple of years. If you guys want to do a lease, it's about an additional $3.20. The next couple of pages here that you would have in the report that I sent to Chris is the cash flows. Basically, you just want to look at the next 5 years and just make sure that cash balance is getting back up to where it needs to be, and that's more just a check and just to make sure that all makes sense, which it does. Page 9 there's the rates and charges. So just a quick little story, and then I'll wrap this up here. So when I first moved out of graduated from college and moved into my first apartment, I found one of the cheapest apartments in Noblesville where I lived at the time. It was great because it was really cheap, but a couple of cons where there was no washer dryer and there was no trash service. And I thought that, this is a great deal. I'm getting such a good deal on this rent, but there was no trash service because it was in a really cool area in Noblesville, in downtown. It was on the second floor. So where the bottom floor was a retail store, and we had a nice view over the downtown area, really cool. But there was no trash service, and I didn't realize how big of a deal it was until 10 or 11 o'clock every night. I was taking my 2 or 3 trash bags like I was Santa Claus, running around to all these dumpsters and dropping my trash because that was my only option. So looking back, if they told me that, hey, $25 a month, you can get your trash service after doing that for a couple months, I would have said, heck yeah. So just thought it'd be kind of cool to share that with you guys. But again, back to the numbers here, this is kind of what we're looking at. I think, an increase of $575, I think that's going to get you to where you need to be honest. And then option 2, if you guys do want to do that lease, basically that extra $75,000, $80,000 a year, that's going to make up that lease payment. I do know that it's interesting that something Chris told me when we've been working on this is that the last rate study that was done by a different firm, I'm not sure who, but that was a handful of years ago. And if I remember correctly, Chris, that number was about $22 a month.
No, I think, no, we went to 15, if I'm not mistaken. Joe, do you remember? I think we decided on 15, but I think the proposed rate at the time was close to 19.
So
Somewhere in there. We were close to $4 to $5.
Sure.
What they decided to go with difference at the time.
I mean, and when was that?
That was
We
17.
went low.
Yeah, I don't, again, I think it was,
We went lower than what we were supposed to.
yeah, it was quite a bit lower.
Mhm.
The reason why I brought that up, and I think it's important because if in 2017, the rate recommended was $19, now basically the rate recommended is $22.50. So that's basically a $3.50 change.
And the $22 rate's just to make up the shortfall, correct?
Yeah, so with that,
To get you,
I mean, what this is showing here in option 1, $116,840. I mean, it's basically, we're taking your operating budget, and that working capital is, not typically included in budgets, frankly, because it doesn't need to be, but I think it should be, just because, no one is perfect at budgeting. If you know anybody, please let me know, give me their contact info. So, and that is gonna include maintenance on your current vehicle, which is older than what it would be, if you guys are getting a new lease. So basically what this model is showing is that the revenue shortfall, 575, is just to make up for increases that are to be expected here in 2026 and 27. The difference here, if you're taking that 25 budget, which is about $485,000, if you take that against the 532, that's about 45 grand that would, cut into that 116. So part of when I was looking at this with Chris was just wanted to make sure that, the utility is hanging on here in 2020, 2025, which it is. We talked about the settlements and, kind of where those cash balances were. Fortunately, the utility does have sufficient cash balances to be able to, sustain any, if there's more to be spent than is brought in. But that can only go on for so long, right? If you're spending more you're bringing in, then eventually that's going to just keep eating away at that cash balance. So I do think it's important here to, strongly consider option one. If the lease isn't on the table, if it is, then, that's obviously going to be additional in order to, have that ability to, be able to afford that lease. And I think that particularly this is a good time before things start to ramp up with SB1 here the next few years. As city resources become limited, this is a way to try and combat that early. Where most communities, what I imagine is, I'm not gonna hear from them for 3 years, and then they're gonna start calling my phone and trying to figure out what the heck to do. And, this would be one option for you guys as well, is not only to look at the sanitation fund, but this is also gonna be something that's gonna be helpful for your general fund as well. And if this were to be ever a standalone fund, we basically have to take those 4 lines there and just remove those. So that would be an additional $100,000 a year of revenues that would have to be made up by sanitation fees. I don't think that that's, really realistic at this time due to where the rates are now and what kind of increase that would be. That would basically be doubling that option one increase, adding an additional $100,000 a year of revenue shortfall. I don't think that there's really an appetite to do that. But just to kind of give you some context, it's unique that this is a fund that is flexible with the property taxes and the utility revenues, but that's definitely a good thing because it's provided a lot of flexibility for your budgeting. But particularly with SB1 coming up here in the next few years, this is a good opportunity to try and get ahead of that as well before who knows what's going to happen, because it seems like every time you look at that thing it changes. But at least for now, we know for sure that those homestead, those exemptions and deductions, that's going to reduce the AV, therefore then reducing property taxes unless all the cities and towns decide to increase their tax rates as much as possible.
On the option 2,
Sure.
where we lease the truck, do you show that we retain our current trucks?
Yeah, that's not anything, we've not looking at trading it in.
But if we did lease the new one, would we keep the old ones?
Yes, because we're gonna try to put tippers on that as well, arms on that as well, but we're not gonna put that in a finance. We got a quote on that, it's about $14,000 to put arms on that truck, so we could use that for a backup.
Yes.
And I will say to your point, the rates have to be sufficient to be able to make the lease payment.
Yeah.
It'd be like if you were going to get your mortgage and you said, well, I'm gonna make more money next year. And, the banker's gonna tell you, well, how much money do you make today? So, that, when we're looking at this lease payment, it's an annual lease. So any kind of increase would have to be sure to be essentially adopted And then after 12 months, would be able to be kind of one-to-one with that lease payment at least, preferably more, and that's where that working capital kind of comes in. But, you know, to your point, the rates need to be sufficient to be able to afford the lease payment. And then, you know, depending on what you guys
Because
decide.
Chris and I had a conversation with him on the phone, him and his associate, we discussed it last week, week before.
Mhm.
I want him to explain it to the fact that this increase is not just for a trash truck.
Yeah.
It's for the shortfall that we've let go in the past, plus the additional for the truck, which is $3.20. So I don't want people to think that we're raising rates $8 and something just to cover a trash truck.
Really, we hurt ourselves.
We've
whenever
killed
we-
ourselves in the past, but not keeping up with the.
Well, and the 82, I mean, the other thing you have to keep in mind is that 82 that is coming from tax base, that
Mhm.
we can see a little bit of a loss in that under Senate Bill 1. So, I
Yeah,
mean, that's just something to keep in mind. This is,
looking at like the percentages of folks who pay monthly versus those with late payments, how does that come into play realistically?
it's gonna, I mean, it's not gonna pay it.
That wouldn't,
No, I mean,
on either of those options.
No.
You mean late, so if there's
people that pay versus if we have the late payments and, you know.
Sure,
So
so,
looking at our
liens.
expectations versus reality, or
yeah,
business versus
I can
actual.
take a look here quickly at the income statement,
Okay.
just to try and see kind of what.
To answer your other question, part of that on the other trash truck is Chris brought it up that we retain that truck also for dumpsters.
The reason I was asking was, we're bringing on a new truck, is it to where we could sell one of the trucks we're using now to help offset some of the costs? If there-
I don't know
if there
that
was
you get, I
one
don't know
that
that
was-
you get enough
Yeah,
I don't know that you get enough out of that to offset much.
I definitely know it wouldn't be all of it.
Yeah,
I'm just
no,
saying-
well, I'm just saying,
And in the back of this
Anything,
lease,
yeah.
you know.
yeah,
fifth
you
year-
may get a little bit, but I wouldn't think.
On the 5th year of the lease, also on the back page, if you look at the payment that you receive back at the end of the lease, it's 97.
So that,
Trucks are actually not.
that's one of the other things with this option, is that the preventive maintenance cost is figured into that. They will come here, they service the truck. That way, because it does have a $97,500 buyback at the end. So my thought was, and our thought process when talking to them is, if they're doing the maintenance, I mean, outside of us, you know, doing something stupid or a major accident, that truck's, they're responsible for it. That truck's gonna have its full value at the 97.5 to go to the next.
And we've had this conversation over and over and over, is the fact that regardless of which way we go on a truck, we're gonna have one of some kind.
Did we source additional quotes?
Yes, we've talked to a couple of companies and they're all,
Sort of.
and they're in this ballpark.
That's what I had written down too, and to bring up is right before I came on, like 2.5 years ago, we had two different companies that quoted, and they were both higher than where we would go now.
Yeah.
2
Yeah,
years
we
ago.
looked at outsourcing. I
They would be
mean,
even higher now, I would imagine.
yeah, it was, and then we'd have no control.
But the outsource
Oh, no, I
rate,
don't mean.
No, I know
outsourced.
that, no, I know, I understand, I'm just saying, that the other thing is, we wouldn't
I
have
remember
any
us
control.
Looking at that before too.
Yeah, we had to talk to a couple companies, and they gave us a couple quotes, and they were, I think both of them were higher than what, with the truck, so.
Okay, so we have received additional quotes for other trucks.
Yes, we have, we've talked, we've looked at a couple
it's
of
a
different,
national account as well, it's on the source well.
yeah, this is, so, it's a national account.
I do think, I know it's a huge jump, but I do think it's important for us to have preventative with a new truck, because I can.
Well,
think of, like all of the maintenance that we have had to have, and you said was on 25,000.
From a financial standpoint, this is year 6 or 7 on this truck, so we bought it, leased it, financed it for 5 years, and we've been able to stretch it for 2. But, I don't know that the yearly payments up to that, but we're spending quite a bit of money.
And if something large happens.
Yes, I mean, and we were doing that even before the financing was over,
Now,
hydraulics and
It was just brought up in the Board of Works meeting today that he has to have some work done to this other truck.
Yeah, brakes and drums.
Brakes and
which will be
drums.
expensive.
Where is the closest service area for this company or for the truck? Where would we service it?
They would come here.
They come on site and service.
They come on site and service it.
I mean, if it's something major, they would take it back to best
Sure.
company and.
I think they tell us, I think they have, Columbus.
Columbus, Indiana and Louisville, yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we have some options with that.
It's just that we put ourselves in a bind.
Yeah, that's a
Not
spot
good.
for sure, but we really shot ourselves in the foot back, whenever that was, 2017 or whatever, whenever we went low on the increase.
You know, and then part of the additional cost within the sanitation is a finance, or not, from a employee perspective, almost all of our street sanitation department comes from sanitation due to, those that were here when, the state passed the NVH, the 50% restriction
Mhm.
of what we take in. You know, I've had to make our budget work. And we had extra money, you know, through NVH, so we've been able to do that. Our budget's probably $30,000 a year more than what we bring in, which is never a good business model. The only thing that saves us right now, and, you know, I say this to Shane all the time, is the mowing of the tip lots. We're bringing in, and that's getting less, but we've been bringing in an extra $30,000 a year because it's extra work for them, and I understand that, but it has, in that sense,
And
saved.
it hurts us.
It hurts, it does, I mean, it's,
You know, yeah.
it's never, I mean, it's never a good thing to have to, in my opinion, have to do this, but
It's reality and
it's reality, absolutely.
it's part of it.
Do you have on there for either option, how long this rate would hold its level for? Or,
So that's kind of what the cash flow comes into play, so let's just look at option 2, for example. So a lot of numbers here, but basically, kind of, if you want to look at that bottom line. Just a second. So basically, you know, we're here, we're already halfway through 25, so when I'm looking at this, at the top left there, just kind of wanted to know that these are 12-month periods, right? So 25 through 30, but, you know, kind of imagine if the rates were adopted next month to be billed the following month, to be collected the following month, it'd be closer to September, right? So basically, we have all of your revenues here at the top, and then those two kind of indents, the rate adjustments. Basically, that's where that rate increase comes into effect. Then your revenue requirements, and this option here, the funding from the ARPA refund, I believe that's what that was, would offset the trash cans. So that's taken out of the lease. That's why the lease is 79,000, it's not 100,000 and some change. So then basically where you have 26 and 27, your pro forma operating disbursements, that's for 26 and 27. And then there's increases that I've assumed after that for 28, 29, and 30. So if you're, and I was pretty aggressive with this, to be honest, where I'm assuming large increases in your operating budget in 28, 29, and 30. Let's see what percentage I gave here, 4%. 4% inflation, which is a bit more than average inflation. And basically where that bottom line is the ending sanitation fund cash balance. So your question, does this keep you guys level? It keeps you level for a few years. And then as inflation starts to eat away at your budget, it's that cash balance starts to decrease. Then you would do another increase, and that's kind of how it would flow. But again, pretty aggressive with the operating budget for those future years where I'm assuming 4% inflation when maybe that might be closer to 2 or 3.
And we were told, I think we were told 17, or maybe it wasn't even when we did our sewer rate years and years ago when Roger and I were on council, that really on a rate study, you're looking at a lifespan of about 3 to 5 years. Would that be correct? I mean,
Yeah,
that'd
and that's
That's where you're at,
why I did 5 right there, just because I wanna check, just wanna check and make sure, and I could certainly recommend to adopt a budget for $598,000, but I don't think that really makes sense for today, because that's 5 years down the road, but an increase for 2 or 3 years, that kind of puts you in the middle, and there's a lot of assumptions that go into this, but basically, just wanna make sure that if you're going to increase your rates, just wanna make sure that it's enough, so that you don't have to come back in a year and say, oh, shoot, we need to do another 5 or 10%. So, that's not.
That's why I was asking.
Anyone
So
wants to do.
this rate's good for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I'd say 3 to 5 years, and that's where, at that point, I would recommend to look at the rates. Doesn't necessarily mean you need an increase. Typically, you need an increase if your cash balance is starting to drop. But if you're operating, the operations are under control and, that cash balance is staying relatively stable. When I say cash balance, I mean the operating fund. I believe that you guys should be getting the fund balances every month, and then you don't need to look at it month to month, right? But especially if if the city were to go ahead and adopt an increase, but, after 3, 4, 5 years, you want to that's how you monitor it, is that operating fund. And, if you think that there might be something that needs to be looked at, then a rate study would recommend it. If the operating fund is in the black, if it's doing well, you guys are saving money for other, projects, maybe the sanitation, maybe the budget doesn't come in quite as high, which would be great, because that would free up some flexibility in your general fund with those property taxes, that could, potentially be allocated from one fund to the next. So there's a lot of factors, but yeah, 3 to 5 years, and, at least that would be a good benchmark for at least looking at the rates and just saying, hey, where are we at? Doesn't necessarily mean every time you need a rate increase. Most cities and towns that have like, help, but, it's always good to just to try and check on that, 3 to 5 years, so that's a good recommendation. Any other questions on this?
Can you take it back to the main slide?
Sure.
It has the option 1, option 2.
Yeah. Did you guys get copies?
yes,
Okay,
I
I got a couple, I've got some.
Oh, wow, some of them things.
If you want them to,
I'll
just to
take one.
Papers in there, so just to have that, but, yeah, so like the mayor said, I think the 575, that would be an increase to help you get back to whole. And then there would be an additional 320, and that's gonna give you the lease payment on the new truck. So if the council and city did decide to move forward, I could work with Josh and help, get an ordinance put together that's basically gonna have these rates. And then, we can start the process of introducing and adopting rates with public hearing. Go over a couple of these.
Any other questions for Brandon? I know sometimes we gotta make decisions not favorable to everybody, so. To me, we got to do what we gotta do it's part of the business, you can't can't sink.
Yeah.
Brandon, thank you.
I think we have to make sure that, and I'm actually looking at this right now, I think that it's important for us to also make sure that if there are those who are, having any issues with you know, the payment increase or what have you, that we provide them with the resources necessary to, you know, be able to utilize, other areas to pay those utilities, like whether it be go to 211 or what have you. I just need to make sure that.
No, I'm-
provided-
Okay, I don't want to be full.
I think, I can if you want me to, but, all right.
Into the communication for whenever we do, you know, if and when, you know, no sticker shock, things like that.
What's the timeline you're thinking on implementation of this? If we do decide to do
So how long does it take to get everything prepared for the ordinance and whatever we need to do? Josh?
Well, we just draft it, and then we have to have the,
Carrie?
public hearing. And there's typical process for ordinance passage. We have it on the July docket.
For the public hearing?
So you would typically introduce it and then have the public hearing at the for the second reading.
Any comments, Joe? You feel comfortable with it?
Necessary evil.
I think the same, I mean, we have to do it in order for us to be able to provide the services accurate, you know, adequately in the community. But at the same time, I think that it's a smart decision for us to take the preventative lease option, just because in the long run, if things do happen, I would be very fearful of us having a very large payment on our hands if something would happen. That's my thought.
I mean, that was, when we spoke with Pest, that was one of the things at 97, they said, you know, this has the built-in preventive maintenance, and
And we
They'll
just
come here
need
and
that kind of
which
thing.
is, again, to me, I guess my thinking is if they're taking care of it.
They take care of everything.
They
Yeah,
take,
everything's covered except for a drastic, if we was to wreck the truck.
yeah, if we were to wreck the truck or something, everything's got to
Insurance on it.
Yep,
Everything's
they take
covered.
care.
For
Yeah.
5 years, everything's covered.
And two, we ran into issues in the past where something has happened and we've been scrambling to try to find funds.
That's the issue.
We've not been able to pick up what we've had to rent, and that's outrageous.
Well, I've said for a while, I'd like to have a capital expenditure plan in place for everything. I mean, we know we're gonna have maintenance and ongoing issues. But, you know, when we have to, we have to have the truck welded, was it a couple years ago?
Yeah, like last.
A liner.
Yeah, 11, that was $11,000 or $12,000, and, I mean,
It's a lot.
that each one,
It adds up quick.
it adds up very quickly. It's like sewer, there's no cheap fix to anything like that.
And you have to have it.
Yeah,
I mean, you have to have sanitation, you have to have sewer, all those things.
yes, ma'am.
And I personally like the arm options because it's gonna cut our time in half of the pickup. It's gonna be cleaner, healthier, safer. As you well know, right now we've got 3 people on the truck. And we can cut this down to 1, which will help,
Move that for something else.
yes, relieve us some, as we do not have the inmates at this time, you know, I don't know when we'll get them, so we're kind of strapped on.
What's going on with that?
Well, that's all with the county, so I'm not making no comments on that.
Probably not a good time to.
I just know sometimes we have to make decisions that's not likable, but sometimes we got, that's one thing I do know, when Chris and I was on the council, we did hear from Mayor Campbell that, sometimes we had to reach back to see if we had a spine, because we had to make decisions not favorable to everybody, so. And we've had to do that in the past. I know it's not something that we all want to do.
Well, it affects, this affects everybody sitting here, this affects,
We've done a lot of
we're
research.
all gonna have to pay this.
We've done a lot of research on this, trying to see if we could even outsource it. We were at a $35 rate to outsource it. You know,
Yeah, it was,
just wasn't feasible.
outsourcing was not,
We were gonna kill the residents at a 35 rate.
Well, I've dealt with outsourcing it and, like, in some of my sites that for work is terrible. And you're at the mercy of them.
yeah, and again,
They don't pick up, you can't do anything about it, you're not
yeah,
in control.
they're gonna be calling in here and they're gonna be calling you and you guys, and why didn't you pick the trash up even though you don't have anything to do with it?
So, I just need to know if the will of the board is willing to move forward. In that form of a motion, move forward.
You don't need a motion.
Don't need a motion on this one.
So this would include the totes?
Yes, that, he had in there that, one, to cut the cost, some of the money we're gonna recover from the solar project on the ARPA funds. And we talked about, you know, if council's willing to spend, I think it's $150,000, whatever it is, to buy the totes.
How many are there per household?
You get one per household, they're 96 gallon totes, so, well, I mean, I know I think right now I set like a 45 gallon trash can out, and I'll have a couple of bags set inside, so in theory, I mean, a
96.
so it should cover most households, and you can
We
purchase,
still have our ordinances in place too, like larger item pickups, things like.
so if someone, let's say Mike needs two, he can purchase one, but it would cost him, we'd have to look at an extra fee for the extra.
Mhm.
So we're gonna have to look at some options there to see, and Joe and I discussed this the other day, whether we should charge for an extra one or let them have that and charge an extra fee for the two pickups.
Now, what do we do, because I know this
Right,
has happened in the
either way.
past, I'm not saying that it
Pardon?
is now,
Yeah, but even-
but say one of the sanitation workers were to crack one of these, who replaces that?
Well, if we crack it, I'm sure we'll have to replace it.
Okay.
We're not gonna hold that to the tenant, but these cans were the heavy duty cans. They were really,
Thick plastic.
really heavy duty.
Yeah.
Cans. I thought they were very nice cans, so 90 gallon they were. Of course, I let these guys pick the color, which I wasn't in favor of the color, but that's okay.
What's the color, purple?
We had to go with Kentucky blue,
Oh,
but that's okay. They were nice cans. I have to say that. They were heavy duty cans with nice wheels, so.
they didn't have red, Mike.
Yeah, did Chris pick the color of these?
Can I spray paint it or something?
Yeah.
It's a fine.
It's fine.
$1,000.
I ain't having no Kentucky in my house.
Not too many do.
Instead of city
Can I
emblem, but
purchase a
UK
red
on
one?
Mike's.
It will have the red emblem on it.
No,
Wait, so we're getting our emblem on it too? Now, if we took that off, would there be a lesser cost?
No, it's just.
No,
Okay.
it's cost, no, it's not, there's nothing,
Okay.
that's in, because they will, my understanding is Best will number the cans. So when they pass them out, we will have a list of serial numbers of whose can,
Okay.
we'll have a master list of, you know, whose cans are whose, and
Okay.
So again, thanks, Brandon. Well, and,
Yeah.
I think it's the will of the board just to kind of move on, try to see what we can do, move
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, the only other request I have, and I will keep saying, is that we have better recycling services. That's all.
Thanks, guys. Well,
Brandon, thank you.
Okay. Any other old business? Okay, moving along. We're going to new business. Kelly, looks like you're on the list up next. If you would stand up and state your name and your request.
We're just in here.
That's fine, that's fine.
My name is Kelly Hans. I'm the Executive Director of Holding Space Recovery Project. I know some of you guys here, and I don't know some of you guys here. So we have a certified recovery community organization, and we are actually located here in Austin, on 31. And we do a couple of different programs out of there, and one of them is our IRAC program, which is Integrated Reentry and Correctional Support. So we have a team of peers that works inside our Scott County Jail. We get that funding through Mental Health of America, and they fund our program 70%. And then they want 30% to come from the community, so all of the IRAC sites around, we request 30% from their communities. So, and I kind of did a cover letter for you guys. We have requested, I've already went in front of the county commissioner, so we've requested our 25% through our county commissioners. Last year, I went to them for the full 30%. And so now I'm coming to you guys, I'm gonna come here and then Scottsburg City Council for that other 5%, which would be 2.5 from you guys, 2.5 from Scottsburg. And that total is $8,936.35. Does everybody have one of these?
Yeah, we passed it.
I guess I should pass these. I don't even know if I made enough copies.
Yeah, you should,
It was on, it was an attachment.
Okay.
You have, you need that. And Lindsay couldn't be here with me tonight. She had a family emergency come up. So attached in here, I have on the back side of this, on the, behind the letter, is like our total operating budget. And the state come up with that when we originally launched our IRAC program in 2022. So the total is $357,454. And then $250,000 of it is provided by MHAI, and then our county, we are asked to get the $107,000. And then I kind of did the breakdown to what I requested from the county and then what I'm requesting from both city councils. And behind that is the abatement strategies, so like the restricted opioid settlement funds. And I highlighted, I hope, I think I got everybody in color here, but I kind of highlighted where what we do with our IRAC program, how we fall into the unrestricted funds category. And you can kind of go through, they're front and back on all of the pages in our program and what we do, and with reentry, how we kind of fall into the restricted funds. I also attached in here our scope of work, so what our grant, when we work through MHAI, what is expected of us in our organization and our team, so like the reporting and what goes into the state. So I put the scope of work from MHAI in there. And then I also, at the very back of it, I attached, of course, when we did this, it was through the end of April. Our year will end June 30th, and so I can give you those numbers, but from July, when we launched in there, Thrive had this contract up until July of last year, and then Holding Space was able to get it and keep it within the community. So we just kind of did a breakdown of numbers for you guys, so you could see what we've done in the jail, how many people we've seen, what we've been able to do in there, and kind of give you a narrative, so you can kind of see what we've done over the last year with that. I just threw a lot at everybody. If you have questions, I will do my best to answer them.
I will say, like, I myself feel like this is an important program to have, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with MHAI, but, you know, they're amazing to work with. So like, as far as funding goes and everything like that, I think that's not anything that would ever go away from this program. And heavily regulated, I know that that's something too. We want to make sure that whenever these services are available, that they're done correctly, things like that. So, you know, as far as like my background goes, to know how you guys are doing things and what that looks like, I do think it's very imperative for the community to have peer navigators, case managers, and all that stuff, and then also working with the sheriff's department to make sure that these things, you know, are rolled out well. So myself, I'll just say, like, I don't feel like that's a crazy ask. I think that it's necessary.
Chris, what is our restricted opioid balance?
As of end of last month, I don't have an updated final report coming out, but nothing's coming out restricted, we're at 21,916.45. So you've got the funds to do this.
There's there.
Should have asked for more.
You're fired.
Is this something you think is like an annual thing?
So,
Now she knows the
I-
funding it is.
Hey, it's restricted, I mean,
This is restricted, I mean, that's, there's not a lot we can, this definitely fits within what we can do, there's not a lot we can do with it, so.
and I had a conversation, because that was one of the questions when I went in front of the commissioners, and I've had some other, conversations. There's been a lot of changes at the state level, well, even at the federal level, like, funding, taken from different, wherever. So MHAI, and when I say MHAI, I mean Mental Health of America, Indiana. They are looking at different federal and state grants to to see if they can offset some of these costs. So it's not, when you get into communities like ours in Scott County, we are much smaller than some of the other ones. So Delaware County gets a lot more money. It's a much bigger jail. There's a lot more money rolling through there. And then when you get into the smaller towns like us in Davies County, we kind of struggle to come up with that 30%. So they're trying to find ways where it's not so hard on us smaller communities to do it.
And depending on the administration, MHAI could have funds increased and be able to allocate more at some point.
So what's will of the board?
I'll make a motion.
Have a motion to approve, I hear a second.
Awesome.
Second by Stacy, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
thanks, John. I'll
So what's your
send,
number on?
I'll send you an agreement.
Josh, if we get that back from Josh,
Okay, one of the things that we do, I should have said this, one of the things that we've done over the last year with our county commissioners and our county council, is, and we don't blow up emails, so like every other month, we just kind of do like a quick, like, this is what we've done over the last couple months, is how many people have came through, this is how many people went to treatment, and like, and we just send an email out to them, just kind of let them know what we're doing to keep them posted. It's your guys' money, and so we are willing to do that as well. We'll just throw you guys on the email as we send those out, so you can kind of get a report every couple of months as to what we're doing.
appreciate it.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next item will be ordinance 2025-05, adopting the 2025 comprehensive plan. Amy, you've got the floor.
Alright, so last month we did the presentation and kind of went through things. And then I know you all should have received the PDF of, I think a couple days after that meeting, of the comprehensive plan. I think I replied back to your questions, let me know, we can get those answered. So the plan commission had forwarded a favorable recommendation with, a few of the minor kind of tweaks or changes to that plan. We went through those last month too, but I'll just recap them. But it was again, adding a residential growth areas, that future land use plan, and then updating the outline of that. Adding a gateway on 256 on the east side to that transportation map. And then some just, small, doesn't change any intent, but adding advisory, where we put planning commission, just specify we are advisor, we are not an area planning commission here anymore, which you guys used to be when we were with the county. And then, tweaking some of the language on like how often you're gonna review the plan, just being more periodic, so it gives you flexibility, and we'll add the current zoning map to the plan, even though that's gonna always be changing, you know what I mean? Especially as we review the ordinances here, but, so I can pull a presentation up if you need to, or really, I think it was, I know Stacey and you all are the ones that maybe hadn't sat through a lot of the, you know, the conversations and dialogue, so I feel like I've probably addressed questions from the others as we've gone through that process. If not, I'm happy to talk through those too, you all too, but, I wanna make sure that the questions we can, if not, we'll move on.
No, I read through all of it, and I had some notes that I think, you know, overall, as far as like the objectives go, the goals, I think that, you know, those are good. And I think for us, I wanna make sure that like, we are all in alignment, on what we do moving forward, because in other, like, in some of our meetings, some of the things that have been mentioned in here don't, align. So I think that that's important. So, but you also mentioned in this comprehensive plan that we have workshops and things like that set up. I just want us to make sure that we hold ourselves to our end of the bargain. That's the biggest thing. But as far as the comprehensive plan goes itself, I think that it's good.
Mike, you got anything?
I still didn't know it. My daughter was in for the last 2.5 weeks in Colorado, so I ain't done a whole lot of that.
I'm
It's
prepared.
expensive, but I've got the summary here if you want.
I'm ready to make a motion unless somebody has more questions. Favorable motion. All motion. Approval.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
He's remember this is what I was given time?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, aye.
You good, Mike?
Yes.
Okay. So any nays? Motion carries. Thank you.
Perfect, and if, we can get a copy of that resolution, we'll just tuck it in there, usually just for easy reference, or I think we did it by ordinance. is that what
Ordinance.
she said? If we can get a copy of that, that'd be super, we'll get it tucked in there, we'll
I'll
find
send you a copy.
copies, everything sent over to you guys.
I'll get you a copy.
Perfect, thank you so much, Chris. And then just as a recap, again, I know there's some that are on the committee, but we're working through the ordinances currently, and we have one more committee meeting, we've had 5, maybe 6. The committee just working through all the ordinances, zoning and the subdivision control ordinances, which you don't have subdivision control ordinances right now, like how you divide a parcel up. We're working through, so we have one more working session on that, and then we'll have a draft ordinance for all of that. So I'll make sure that when that draft goes to committee, Chris, you'll be on that, we can, make sure it hopefully gets to Michael and Stacy too, to make sure you guys can look through that. So if you have questions, we'd love to get those flushed out, and it's, it's not like, it's not a skinny document, but, and then we can start to work through that process, but we'll be back here in, a number of months to adopt that as well, just to give you guys a heads up.
Sounds good, thanks.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
You provide us with booklets of that?
Yes, so what we'll do is we'll give you the hard copy, hard copies, I cannot remember how many is in our contract with you, but we'll send those, and then, digital files, so usually stick it all on a thumb drive, like including all the root files, like GIS files and stuff like that. So we'll get those all to you here.
Thank you.
It takes a little bit, because we don't print this in-house, we have, what I mean? NC prints, we can print this for, so. Okay,
Thanks.
thanks guys.
Okay. New business. Joe,
I do not.
Chris?
Nope.
Mike?
I was just gonna ask about the fireworks show. So I know in the past, we have been pretty restrictive on who we've allowed to vend.
I think she's kind of loosened up on that.
Yeah,
It's hard to control, because you had some vendors wanting to kind of hold down and not sell the same products they are, so we've had so many requests, so we just got so much space over there, so we're just gonna fill the space.
I just know, well, and I only ask because being being a member of the Lions Club in Sciotos, I know whenever we had originally put everything together, that they had restricted us or who was coming in, so we would be able to make profits, so we could provide additional, support to the communities. And, one of the things that we get a lot of our funding for the scholarships from is that event specifically. So I know it's gonna hurt us. And,
Well, I think,
we'll probably be able to give away one scholarship this year.
I think the last couple of years, you guys have sold out of everything you had, so. and
Or we didn't have competition at that point. Last year, we didn't.
And I don't know what
as
kind of
much.
competition you'll have this year, I don't know.
That's what I'm saying, like, I know there's gonna be food vendors in there, we were the only food vendor,
Well, no, other
aside from the fire
our
department.
department and everything.
We just didn't.
And I don't know if there's any other food vendors that signed up, it's not, because from what we were told yesterday, y'all may not show up, so how are we gonna turn anybody away?
Well, I'm saying before, we had always been told that there were restrictions, that it was basically like the fire department was only, they were let in, we were let in, and then like, it's like, well, there was a specific amount and that was why. So for the change, it was, I'm just letting you know, like, the reasoning behind us questioning ourselves into like, it would have been nice for us to have a heads up, I guess.
Well, I think
Well, that's another thing too, the vendors pay a fee if they're gonna let.
nobody pays a fee. I mean,
So,
in the past, from what I've been told, even the Lions Club actually contributed back for the fireworks for the next year, but they haven't done that for quite some time. They used to, because she's got documentation of that.
Is the Lions Club giving money back?
Yeah, they've given them for the
We definitely won't
fireworks.
be able to do that now.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends what we want.
Yeah,
Like, do we want
Yeah, I guess.
a
we'll
bigger
leave that to
festival, like, from the city standpoint, because I represent one of those organizations
be-
too.
Right,
From the city standpoint, do we want a large event, or do we want not?
I guess that's why we should
Because-
have the conversation ahead of time
Right.
and notify people.
But like, Fireman's Festival for years, we didn't allow food vendors,
Mhm.
and we were smaller. And then we allowed food vendors, and maybe we got a little bit bigger, I don't know. But, I mean,
and to my knowledge, I mean, I don't know what other vendors has reached out to her to sell foods.
I've heard there was someone from Columbus that has the, so.
Yeah,
Now,
I'll
whether, this is hearsay, but at the same time, like, I'm just saying, I know from our standpoint, it's going to hurt us being able to provide the additional into it.
That's something you have to check with her tomorrow, because she handles the vendors, and I know that she's been talking to Ishmael quite a bit about it, but then when he told her last night, I don't think anybody had a problem with it prior until last night, and they said that
We
yesterday,
had a meeting yesterday, that's why.
and the meeting was because it was on the same night of the fair, not because it was of the vendors coming here.
No, we had a Lions Club meeting.
I
so
know,
it
but the
was
meeting
addressed.
was called to discuss whether to come tonight, because of the fact that it was on the same night of the, last night of the fair.
There were multiple things, yes.
Yeah, we did
Yeah, it
not
was
change,
discussed.
we didn't change our venue. The fair moved theirs up a week. We can't change ours, because that's
Oh, your
always,
meeting,
no, the fireworks.
fireworks meeting, is that?
No, we don't have a fireworks meeting, the date,
So the fireworks is on the same night as the last night of the fair.
exactly.
Yeah,
And there's
okay.
nothing we can do to change that, because it's always the Friday night before.
Mhm.
It was already set with us. See, we gotta set with the people that's putting off the display.
Mhm.
We gotta take the times they have available. So they did not have anything prior or anything toward, closer to the fourth.
And it
So we-
started out that way, but we got a better rate for fireworks too.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
well, that's that's something totally different than what I was addressing.
we can't change our dates too late.
Yeah, no, I understand that
And-
completely.
And I believe the people from the fireworks board changed theirs because they had to change vendors, carnival vendors, and that's how they had to work it, so they changed their date. They moved theirs up a week.
The fairport?
Fair.
Yeah, oh, I knew
The
that,
fair,
yeah, they did that a long
But
time.
as far as how many food vendors, Stacy, I don't know. I don't know how many she has. Melissa takes care of all that, but.
I just think that it would have been nice to have like a heads up, especially to. the
But we've
folks that
had
are-
certain vendors up there wanting to sell, I mean, they want to kind of promote popsicles or different things, that's kind of how to tell, you can't do this, you can't do that, it's gotten out of hand. Not just the food, she's kind of held the food sources down. It's just a little knick-knack stuff that she's had a hard time controlling.
The glow sticks.
Okay,
The glow.
Glow sticks and things of that nature.
It sounds like this year it's too late to change anything, but we could see how this year goes and face next year.
And ours can get, we don't have enough space over there to allow bukus of people in there anyway, so we just don't.
then that also raises, why would you increase it then? But
And I don't think that's happened intentionally. I mean, I don't know where all this has come from, but,
lack of communication.
well, somebody needs to communicate with Melissa because she handles it all. She's not going out and solicit who's
No,
gonna come,
I'm just
who's not.
saying, it would have been nice to kind of have a heads up and then.
Did
also-
anybody check with Melissa? No. Did you ask
It's
Melissa?
always been the same.
I mean, but did you ask Melissa if she had other food sources?
I saw.
It's because you
lists
said
of
it was
other
hearsay. I
sources.
mean, I'm asking you a question.
Well, I
Did you
saw,
approach her?
no, I have not, Roger.
Okay. And I suggest you approach her tomorrow then, because I don't have the answers for that.
Okay.
I mean, kind of to me, Stacy, it's kind of a lack of communications on all parts and not just Melissa's. We're not sending out letters. Pardon?
There was never a reason for us to question before, that's.
Then
why.
how do you know did you ask her when you heard there was other food sources? Did you ask her?
We can take it offline since it's a.
Yeah, I mean,
I've got one thing.
I get tired of hearing about the lack of communication, Stacy, when nobody comes in here and talks to us about anything. I'm hearing all this through the grapevine. It's now time to put that to bed.
It just happened.
No, I'm talking
yesterday.
about other things besides that. This.
I've addressed the other stuff as well, multiple times I've mentioned it in meetings.
You have
so-
never come to me,
Not in a
Stacy,
council meeting,
but you've never come to me and talked to me about anything. But you're on the emails that these
but
old
whenever
people
I'm in
complaining.
meetings, things are
We'll
brought
end
up.
that.
Guys,
Let's go ahead.
can we,
Let's go ahead.
I got one last thing. Was approached by a company, their investments. Didn't know we could do this and, went over it with Josh. The money that we have on the sewer bonds, we're required to hold 1 year back of payment or have it set aside in case something happens to make for our payment. We can invest that money. It's liquid, you know, if something we're having, we can get to it. And Josh could speak more to this. When we refinanced in 2015 the sewer bonds, we didn't extend the length of the bond. We just got a better rate.
Mhm.
I was adamant that we didn't extend the life of the, of the bond. Got a better rate on it. We're at 3.16. We can, that money in an account, we can draw up to that money or go back. And you guys have given me the permission in the past to invest. It's in our policy. I just wanted to let you know that I'm going, Roger and I sat in a meeting, I think it's a wise thing. We can use it either to put into sewer improvement or pay down the bond. I don't know how much, you're talking a % or two. It's not gonna be a ton of money, but anything that we can invest, I think it's a good thing right now.
and you can access it.
It's liquid, so if that money's set aside strictly for it, we make that payment twice a year.
Yeah.
So if we were not able to make that payment, we could get that, but if we weren't able to make that payment, we got bigger issues.
You need.
No, you could give me, I just wanted to make you guys aware. I like to keep you up to date over the finances.
I think it makes sense.
Mhm.
That's all I have. Sorry.
Sorry, John.
I do know.
I have one other thing. Chris and I, and of course, we've been discussing this for quite some time. We want to establish a insurance committee. So actually, I'm gonna ask for one person off this board to fulfill that. Gonna try to have one from each department, from the sewer department, the street department together, one from the PD, one from my office, one from Chris's office. And then Chris and I will sit in on that, and we want votes. We want a 5-member panel to try to, as you all know, the insurance that we're paying is astronomical a year for the employees, which I'm all for that as long as we can afford it. But we're at the state now where we're shortfall of funds, insurance rate increases. I'm not saying that we just basically have to reach out and find another agent. I'm basically for all avenues, we can cut some areas.
Talk to the
and
insurance, talk to our agent, see if there's other options.
Mhm.
We had this in the years past, and insurance hasn't increased, as Chris has told everyone, except for last year, the last few years.
Last year's the first year we've seen an insurance. But with the projected revenue shortfalls moving forward, and again, we've, as a council members, as I'm speaking, as Roger and I were on here, as a clerk treasurer, as working with Roger, we've tried to get our benefits and stuff to where we keep our employees, and I think we have done a pretty good job of that. You know, this Senate Bill 1, I keep bringing this up, is really going to hamper our revenue.
So we just look at all sources to see what we can do to save dollars or save some funds for some of these employees. And we have 25 people that we're paying insurance on, and it's an astronomical number for the year.
Yeah, we're paying, I think,
It's
$700 a month.
$716 an employee a month.
But again, it's just, and it's a great benefit. What can we do and having a committee that somebody, you guys, what can we do to?
On having their input as well.
Absolutely, and that's the thing, and that's, I sat on the committee, we were on council, and we made a decision. It affected the cost of their out-of-pocket, like the copay, the deductible, it was a 90-10 insurance, but the copay went up, and we got regular calls over it, so, and a lot of people have doctors, and that's the other thing we want to look at, make sure that, we're not losing coverage.
Mhm.
Well, as sitting on the council in the past, I've been reluctant to try to take money. To me, if you have insurance that's paid for by employees, you're taking money out of their pocket, and I'm not a fan of that, especially back in the past, our rates was low, our hourly rate was pretty low. I'm not advocating that we do that now. I'm just saying, moving forward, we may have to come to a point to where some of the cost of it keeps increasing. We're going to have to supplement some of the cost of the employees. Whether we like it or
Yeah,
not,
if
because we
we
can't
want to
sustain
do
that kind of
raises,
money.
all the stuff that we do.
So we need somebody off the council that's willing to meet some during the day. I don't know what days we're gonna meet yet, but we gotta get something heading up in the direction of before budgets to see where we're at, and then bring some insurance companies in here and discuss some things. I'm not saying we're not closing the door to anybody, and I'm not trying to say that Richie's out. I'm just saying that with his insurance company, but I'm just saying that we need to look at all avenues. Does that make sense? So does anybody,
I would say I don't have the extra time right now. I couldn't do
Trevor?
that.
Mike, I know you're kind of strapped during the day, aren't you?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Sometimes I don't get on.
So I'm looking at the two at the right's probably got the most time.
I think so.
So you guys to discuss it among you two, and then you guys let me know. Doesn't matter to me.
Do we need to do anything on the formation of the committee? It's just,
Really, just the committee's just making a recommendation to,
Yeah.
correct, something that the council's gonna do anyway, right?
Yeah.
Have you thought about taking a person from each, like the police department?
Yeah, that's what we're
gonna
gonna do. We're going
I'll
to.
take one from the street department or the sewage together, they'll be together. Then I'll take one from each offices,
They know what they
and you know
want.
who you want.
Yeah, and that's what they're doing. We're taking it.
Yeah.
And each one from
Each
all
area, then
the,
one
all
from
the
the council.
departments we have, and let them.
They'll have input. So you guys let me know what you decide. It doesn't matter, just get the ball rolling. Other than that, I have nothing else.
Motion to close.
Motion to adjourn.
say,
That's second. All in favor? Motion carries.
So Trevor? Thanks, sir.